Okay, so Taylor Lloyd is next. Taylor wears two hats. On the one hand, she is a master's student in Kinetics at Laurentian University in her first year. On the other hand, she's also a technologist at CROSH. And her background, she's a registered kinesiologist. She got her kinesiology degree at the University of Guelph. Her current research that she's presenting on today, this is her master's research, is on heat stress in mine workers. Moving forward, she's also building off of this work to look at heat stress and air quality in wildland firefighters. If I didn't flub that too much there, Taylor.
No, I think you
I'll let
crushed
you
it.
take
Thank
over.
you.
I got it. Okay, no, I crushed
Yeah,
it.
you crushed it. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
and I just want to make
thanks.
sure you're seeing the right screen here.
I am, and I can hear you well.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you for the intro, and thank you everyone for sticking around till kind of the end of the day here. But I'm going to be going over the effects of heat stress on underground mine workers. So a little presentation overview. I'll go through an introduction, the purpose of our study, physiological effects of heat stress, previous research, our current study, some results, and then some recommendations at the end. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the heat stress mine work. Heat stress on underground mine workers. These workers may experience temperatures of 42 degrees Celsius at Creighton Mine, which is where our data was collected. So a key thing to note is that March has typically been the coolest time of the year for underground workers. This has not been the case over the last few years, as climate change has resulted in higher temperatures during the winter months. And November is typically the hottest time of the year. So the last major point we'll be discussing today is that the current ACGI guidelines are not working. These guidelines have recommendations for work to rest ratios for all workers, but not for people as individuals. So I'm just going to start with a poll here. What core body temperature becomes worrisome and is an indication of heat stress? So as you can see here, so it's good. We got a little range of answers here, but so the correct answer is 38 degrees Celsius. So throughout the rest of the presentation, I really want you to keep this number in mind. Essentially, no one should be maintaining a core body temperature of 38 degrees Celsius or higher for more than a few minutes, and we'll go through the reasons why. Okay, so the purpose of our study, the main purpose is to describe the physiological effects on underground mine workers working in hot and humid conditions using wearable technology. A secondary purpose is to trial one type of wearable tech. So there's a few physiological factors that we are looking at: heart rate in beats per minute, skin temperature in degrees Celsius, core temperature in degrees Celsius, energy expenditure in kilocalories, and hydration status in as total body water percentage. So a heart rate above 80% of someone's maximal rate indicates that someone is working really, really hard. It can be compared to hiking uphill with a backpack on. So this is very vigorous work. Maintaining this for hours on end can be exhausting. Maximum heart rate, so you know, can be estimated using 220 minus the individual's age. And this is the absolute fastest that their heart can beat. So 80% of that, again, is considered to be a vigorous workload. Skin temperature, it can fluctuate a lot depending on the PPE, the clothing you're wearing, ambient temperatures, if there's wind coming through. But then core temperature does not fluctuate very much. So a normal or safe core body temperature will be between 37 and 38 degrees Celsius, but can go down to about 36. And then hydration status is measured as total body water percentage and should be a minimum of 50% for adult men and 45% for adult women. So again, that's the minimum. Obviously, the higher percentage, the better. So here, often when we think about heat stress, we think about the acute effects like headaches, dizziness, fainting, the things that you can see. But I want to bring to your attention the effects you may not be able to see. So these are the long-term chronic effects of regular exposure to heat stress. Ultimately, heat stress can cause illness. Regular exposure to heat stress can lead to muscle cell death, heart disease and heart attacks, blood clotting, liver damage and failure, and kidney disease and failure. There's many others, but these are just the ones I'm going to focus on today. So what exposure to heat stress can also cause is death. People die from heat stress while on the job. So the next few slides, I'll discuss how the current guidelines and recommendations to workers do not work and do not prevent these illnesses and deaths. Okay, so this is a graph of a previous study that looked at core temperature while following the ACGIH guidelines. So they compared core temperature while doing continuous work to core temperature while following a 3-to-1 work-rest ratio as suggested by the ACGIH guidelines. So along the vertical axis, you have core body temperature in degrees Celsius, and along the horizontal axis, you have each participant. So each bar is a participant. The white bars are young males and the gray bars are older males. So the red line across the screen there is marked at 38 degrees Celsius. And this is where we begin to have concerns for workers' health and safety. So on the left half of the graph, we can see core temperatures reaching up to 43 degrees Celsius, and majority of the participants reaching the 38 degrees at some point in time. And then when the work to rest ratio of 3-to-1 was implemented, we can see the core temperatures are much lower, but almost every participant still reached a core temperature above 38 degrees. So do the ACGIH guidelines reduce core temperature? It appears so, but the better question is, do they reduce them to safe working conditions? And the answer is no. So the current guidelines are not protecting workers. So now we'll get into our study. So here's just some kind of boring demographics. We had 17 men and 6 women participate. Age ranged from about 35 years plus or minus almost 10 years. Weight ranged from 89 kilograms plus or minus 20 kilograms. Heart rate max, which can be estimated again with the 220 minus the participant's age. This ranged from 183 beats per minute plus or minus 6.8. So we had a wide range of ages and body compositions, which both affect someone's ability to respond to heat. So there were 3 pieces of equipment that we used in this study. The first is the Equivital Life Monitor. So briefly, this is a chest harness that holds a device which measures heart rate, skin temperature, and breathing rate. Second was our Tinnitus scale. So this is a scale that uses bioelectrical impedance analysis. The scale sends a current through the body and measures weight, BMI, muscle mass imbalance, fat mass, bone mass, hydration. It essentially gives a full body composition analysis. And then our third major piece of equipment is the BodyCap Core Temperature Pill. So this is an intrinsically safe device that accurately measures core body temperature within 0.2 degrees Celsius. So then going into our basic protocol, data collection took place in November of 2023 and March of 2024. Again, November is typically the hottest time of the year for underground workers, while March is typically the coolest time of the year. That's why these dates were chosen. So data was collected from each participant over 5 days. I would arrive at the mine at the beginning of their shift and give them their Equivital Life Monitor, which they wore throughout the entirety of their shift. So it could be up to about 10 hours. Data was collected every 15 seconds for the whole shift. Prior to their shift, they would fill out a survey about how rested they felt from the previous shift, muscle soreness, how many cups of water they had drank between shifts, and other details just regarding about how they felt coming into their shift. The final stage before they would go work was stepping on the Tinnitus scale. So after about 30 seconds, a full body composition report would print out, and this allowed us to gain some really good pre-shift measures to later be compared. So the workers would then go work their full shift. At the end of the shift, we would return to the mine, collect the Equivital monitor, download the data. The workers would fill out a post-shift survey and step back on the Tinnitus scale for post-shift body composition analysis. This allowed us again to compare their hydration status before and after their shifts. And then on one of those 5 days, and only if the participants agreed to do so, they would swallow the core temperature pill, and this pill would record their core temperature throughout the entirety of their shift. And then quickly, some conditions while we were there collecting our data. November is supposed to be the hottest month of the year and March the coolest. Conditions were unfortunately not normal in November while we were collecting data. A water main broke on day 3, and majority of our participants went home early that day, and then they came to the work the next 2 days, but they reported that they were sitting most of the day. So essentially they were not working as hard as they normally would, and their workload during this time was significantly decreased. In March, conditions were normal, workers were doing their regular tasks. And I just want you to keep this in mind as we go through the next few slides of results. So here we're looking at some heart rate data. The graph on the left is from November and the right is from March. So the red line, it represents the heart rate max of the workers. And then the yellow line is that 80% that we discussed earlier, which should not be maintained for too long, as it's really vigorous work and it'll take a toll on each worker. Each bar, it represents all the workers that work that shift. So the first bar is shift 1, second bar is shift 2, and so on. So what we can see in November, which is a much lower workload, is that days 3 to 5, the workers were staying below the 80%. Now this is good, but we know most of the days they were not doing their regular tasks. So shift 1, there, the dark blue, you can see that they were going above that 80, which was probably more of a regular day for them. And then March data, which is representative of the coolest time of the year, the participants were all reaching 80% of their heart rate max at some point throughout their shift. So average heart rates were much higher in March compared to November, which we can expect. But thinking about March is supposed to be the coolest time of the year, and they're still getting up to that 80%, some getting really close to their heart rate max. So we can assume that in hotter months, it's going to be even worse. So this is data from the coolest month of the year. Okay, and then core temperature. So each bar on here is a participant and their core temperature data from that core pill. The red line at the top, it's placed at 39 degrees Celsius, and the yellow line is placed at 38 degrees Celsius. So 10 of the 19 participants in November had core temperature reaching at or above 38 degrees. As a reminder, many of the participants were not doing physically demanding jobs like they usually would have been. Regardless of workload, core temperatures are still rising to dangerous levels. And then in March, 5 of 8 participants reached core temperatures at or above 38 degrees, 2 of which went well above 39 degrees. To remind you, this is supposed to be the coolest time of the year and the most ideal conditions for underground workers. So to summarize core temperature, even when workload is decreased, core temperatures are still rising. And when temperatures are decreased in the winter, core temperatures are still rising. We're getting above that 38 degrees. So 6 weeks of regular exposure to core temperature above 38 degrees result in a 42% increase in kidney disease. We can gather from our data here that these underground mine workers are being exposed to these conditions all year long. As we can see, even in the coolest month, they're still being exposed to this regularly. So they're at a much higher risk of kidney disease and many other diseases that result from regular exposure to high core temperatures. So this slide, we've got hydration of the workers. So this data was collected from the Kinetics scale. Hydration is measured as a percentage, so percentage along the vertical axis there. The blue bars are male pre and post shift. So the darker blue is pre-shift measures, the lighter blue is post-shift measures. And then female are the purple. Again, darker is pre, lighter color is post-shift. And then the red lines represent the lowest percentage you should be at to be considered hydrated. So the trends were quite similar for November and March. Workers were showing up to work dehydrated or minimally hydrated and leaving work more hydrated, which is quite the opposite of what I would have expected. But what this is really telling us is that workers are not hydrating in between shifts, but drinking lots of water during shift, which again, that is a good thing. But the take-home message here is that workers need to find a way to drink more water after shift. Now we are understanding of the fact that between shifts, likely many of these hours are spent sleeping, but more hydration between shifts would be beneficial. So then a few recommendations here. Real-time monitoring of physiological indicators during all shifts should become standard practice. So what this is getting into is that piece of wearable technology where it needs to be individualized to the worker. Because on one day, like everyone reacts differently to heat, but you could show up one day, you've had a good sleep, you hydrated the day before, you're feeling really rested, and you're not as affected to the heat. And then a few days later, you have a bad sleep, you didn't get to drinking water between shifts, and maybe you wake up a bit sick. And then you're not going to respond the same you did even just a few days before. So this live monitoring of a wearable technology would allow for individuals getting into point 2 here to be alerted when either their core temperature rises to or above 38 for more than a few minutes, sorry, and also when heart rate goes above 80% for an indicated amount of time. And then a worker would rest and it would again be alerted once their levels went back down to safe measures, went back below 38 degrees for core or below 80% of their heart rate max. Then our third point, post-shift heat strain screening should be developed and implemented with treatment becoming part of regular practice. So this could look like a few different things. It could be a survey where employers are finding out, are the employees, they have headaches? Are they feeling dizzy at the end of their shift? How tired are they feeling? Are they hydrated? Are they already having muscle soreness or cramping? And this can really help to create practices to prevent heat strain in the workplace. And then finally, renewed and revised educational focus on heat stress using technology, and then that hydration outside of work. So just more education on one, what can happen if you're regularly exposed to hot and humid environments, so people understand why it's so important to hydrate and to keep your core temperatures lower and to take breaks and those kinds of things. So thank you, and I can take any questions.
We've got a few questions lining up here. The first one is from Bernard Fontaine. He says, we are familiar with heat stress. Can you elaborate on the cohort training and education given to workers on heat stress, behavioral mental health status, age of the cohort, acclimatization for new hires and returning workers, physiological capability depending on previous physiological illness or cardiovascular and pulmonary disease? So that's a bit of a long-winded. So I think let's start with, was there any training or education given to the workers about heat stress and the factors that can modify heat stress responses to the workers?
Yeah, so there were presentations given prior to the study. I'm so sorry, I just realized my video was off the entire time.
That's okay. I thought maybe it was purposeful.
No, it wasn't at all. I even dressed nicely today, but
Oh, look at that.
so yeah, so presentations were given to the workers ahead of time. Once they knew what they were getting into in the study, but also so that they understood the importance of the work that we're doing and why, essentially why the study is important. So yes.
Right. And I would add, like, it was, yeah, not the kind of educational, like, part of the outcomes from this study will be to give feedback back to the company about developing and updating educational that the companies currently have around heat stress. So yeah, but we did do an opening presentation. Okay, is there any information, sorry, yeah, is any information available in regards to break schedule of workers while the data was being collected?
So as far as we know, they're following the ACGIH guidelines while underground, that 3-to-1 work rest ratio. Speaking with participants, it's not always that you get that, like if we're going off an hour, it's not always that every 45 minutes they're getting a 15-minute break. Some of the tasks that they're doing, you can't just stop. So that makes this difficult. But again, as far as we're being told, they're following the ACGIH guidelines for the breaks.
Right. Okay, and Cole Good is asking, well, first says, great presentation. Was heat acclimation taken into account throughout the duration of the data collection? And if so, could heat acclimation impact workers' thermoregulatory responses?
So as we continue to analyze the data, we're looking at the trends throughout the 5 days. And so far, we have noticed that by the end of the week, hydration is decreasing. Things are decreasing by the end of the shift. So in terms of acclimation to it, so far we're not seeing that it's improving as they acclimatize the heat. It's actually, for hydration specifically, it's decreasing.
Okay, and I mean, I guess I would add too is that they're doing a 5-day shift. We have to assume with the 5 on, 5 off that they're never really perfectly acclimatized. And Elena McPhail, I just wanted to make a statement. I work at Creighton Underground. There's a lot of bottled water provided and push to drink, so we do not experience heat stress. That is why they were hydrated post shift. Sorry, I think you're saying yes, they are providing lots of water to protect workers against heat stress, and I would agree, and we absolutely saw that as well, and the workers I think said that too. Like, yeah, access to water is highly available. Yeah,
Yeah, I just want
and
to
yeah,
touch
go
on
ahead,
that.
Taylor. Yeah,
Maybe I'm misunderstanding one little point in here, but it says we do not experience heat stress. I don't agree with that statement. What we're seeing in our data and by speaking with individuals that are underground is that heat stress is prevalent at Creighton Mine. So yes, they are providing bottled water and doing the best they can to help prevent heat stress. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's not working to just provide water. There's other factors that need to be put into place.
agree. And yeah, but I wasn't sure if she actually meant it that
Yeah.
way. But yeah, good point, Taylor. Yeah, that's definitely not what we're hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I think she's kind of saying that in the next comment
Yeah,
as
I'm seeing
well.
that now too.
Yeah. Okay.